Alrighty guys, welcome back to Star Wars Reviews. Today I'm reviewing Star Wars The High Republic, The Battle of Jedha, which was written by George Mann and was released on January 3rd, 2023, which it is the audio drama for Phase 2. A lot like Phase 1 had the audio drama Tempest Runner, which this one is a bit different, mainly because I thought this was a bigger story, where I thought Tempest Runner was a little more kind of a character-driven story, where this one just felt like it had a bigger scale and importance to the overall High Republic story. Although the cast of characters, I would say, is around the same amount as the Tempest Runner audio drama. Just this one just had a lot more going on, and the importance of it felt a little bit bigger, as this audio drama follows up on a lot of plot threads from several of the stories from the first wave of Phase 2, pretty much all three of his novels in the Marvel comic series, and also the Star Wars Insider short stories. This story kind of follows up on all of those in some way or another, which I enjoyed that, as I kind of felt like the Phase 2 stories have been feeling mostly separate from each other. There was a few things connecting them, like the villainous group, the Path of the Open Hand, who had appeared in most of the stories so far, but were really only prevalent in the young adult novel Path of Deceit. And so this story just started connecting everything together, and, from all those stories and bringing them to Jedha. And so I think this story kind of really started to get me more hooked on Phase 2, as I've been enjoying the stories, but it just hadn't had the hook like Phase 1 had for me at the start, with the first wave of stories like Light of the Jedi, Into the Dark, along with all the comics and whatnot. So, this story just got me more on board with Phase 2. I will say I didn't love it as much as some of those Phase 1 stories I mentioned, but I'd say this has probably been my favorite of the non-comic Phase 2 stories so far. But the story is about the Battle of Jedha, or at least a part of it, as I assume we'll see more of it in stuff like the Marvel comic series. But the story follows up on the story from the adult novel Convergence, as in that novel we saw the twin planets of Irem and Arano in a forever war, and we see the heirs of the thrones of both worlds come together and agree to get married to help bring peace to their worlds. So in this story, we see the Jedi and delegations from both worlds come to Jedha to sign a peace treaty, but, stuff goes wrong and a battle breaks out. And, that's a very basic description of the story, but I, actually quite enjoyed it. We do see the Path of the Open Hand kind of have their hand in the battle, while trying to make it like, they didn't do anything wrong. We do get stuff with the Nameless, mainly the Great Leveler, which I do wish we got a little more of, because it's just kind of in the background. I'm assuming we'll get more of that in the later Phase 2 stories, and hopefully the Marvel comic series, which mainly takes place on Jedha. But I do wish we got a little more of it in this audio drama. But like the previous audio dramas, this one has a full voice cast with sound effects and music and whatnot, which I thought most of the performances were solid. Definitely for the main, more central characters, I feel like the performances were good. Some of the more supporting ones are a little more iffy, but the sound effects and music and whatnot is mostly just taken from the films. So all that, sound effects and music and whatnot are all good. But one thing I will say about that is in the later half of the story, when there's a lot more action going on than there is dialogue, I found those moments to kind of be my least favorite, because it was mostly just action noises. So, I guess I just found those moments to be a little boring. I found it easy to follow, but it just wasn't exciting, I guess. And, I do think it took away a little bit from the bigger battle, I guess, in the later half of the story. But when the action was a little more personal, like a character fighting another character, I found those moments to be fun because there, just was a little more dialogue involved. But when it just was like just general action scenes or just mostly just noises, I kind of wasn't into those moments as much. But like I said, there was a full cast of characters, which I like the more main characters. There was 2 Jedi, Creighton Sun and Ada Forte, which both characters did appear in Convergence. Forte was a very minor character in that novel. I think really only in like a chapter or 2 near the end, where Sun was in it a little more as a supporting character. But with both of them, we don't really learn much about them in that novel. But this story fleshes both of them out more, and I came to quite enjoy both of the characters and, the friendship they both have with each other. But they're on Jedha to oversee the signing of the peace treaty, and both of them are following the 2 ambassadors sent from both worlds to sign it. But throughout the story, we see the ambassadors still don't trust each other, which, ends up playing a big role in the battle breaking out, which the battle does end up mostly being between the military forces of Irem and Arano, kind of fighting each other, but obviously there is a lot more going on there, which I'll talk about in a moment. But we also see the Jedi Solandra Show also play a bigger role in the story, which she first appeared in the middle grade novel Quest for the Hidden City. But in this story, she's on a pilgrimage to Jedha and ends up getting caught up in everything as Creighton and Ada need a kind of third-party Jedi who's not really involved in the peace treaty to investigate stuff, which she teams up with probably my favorite character from the novel, Keth Sarapath, who's been in the Star Wars Insider short stories, Tales from Enlightenment. But in this story, he works for the Church of the Force and has a companion droid named P37A, who's been cobbled up with a bunch of droid parts, but started out as a droid from the church. And so the droid only talks in like church scriptures, so I found that quite funny. But Keth is involved in the peace treaty as he's helping the mediator of it, Morton Santeca, which one of the first things which sets the fuse of the battle is an attack on the first attempt at the signing of the peace treaty, when a droid similar to P3 blows up the place, killing Morton Santeca, which beforehand Keth allowed P3 into the building when he wasn't supposed to. And so for a while he thinks P3 was the one who blew the place up. And then afterwards he starts investigating with Solandra and whatnot. At first he doesn't tell her about P3, but then it turns out to not be P3. And so he kind of reveals some of that there. But it ends up being a few different groups. The Path of the Open Hand plays their part in it. And so does a group called the Brotherhood of the Ninth Door. And a man named Tilson Graff, who's a part of the Graff family, which we've seen in the Phase 1 stories. But this Graff ends up becoming the mediator after Morton Santeca dies. But this kind of turns out he's been the one doing most of the stuff, as he's working for the Mother, who's the leader of the Path of the Open Hand, who then gets Graff to enlist the Brotherhood of the Ninth Door to help incite the battle. And so in the end, it kind of ends up being all these different groups who are kind of connected together. We do get a smaller moment where the Herald from the Path of the Open Hand also kind of incites the citizens of Jedha to also be involved in the battle. But that kind of is just a very small part and ends up kind of not really going much of anywhere in this story, because also the Herald is involved with the Great Leveler in this moment and whatnot, and once again, it kind of just, I felt like that was left hanging in this story, and I do wish there was maybe a little more there with that, but it seems like that will come up in the Marvel comic series and maybe other stories also. But obviously the battle is incited by all these groups, but it mainly ends up being between the military forces of Irem and Arano, as both groups think the other one was involved in the kind of stuff that led to the battle and whatnot. But I enjoyed the story. Like I said, I enjoyed the mystery of the people kind of truly controlling everything, and the Jedi getting to the bottom of it and whatnot. And, seeing the Jedi kind of try to stop Irem and Arano from fighting once again. There was a scene with Creighton's son later on in the story, which I quite enjoyed, kind of involved with that. But, really, I thought the story really started to bring together everything from the first several stories from Phase 2 and kind of start connecting them a lot more. And so I really enjoyed that about the story. Obviously, I do think there was a little bit of stuff that kind of got left out of this story, which I would assume will get shown in the other stories, but I would have enjoyed having that more in this story. So, yeah. But my grade for the audio drama is going to be a B+. So, yeah. But next, I will review, I think it's issue 4 of the Phase 2 Marvel series. So you can check that out then. But in the meantime, check out all my other Phase 2 reviews and everything else I do. But it's been Star Wars Review, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.